The current standoff between India and China at the LAC has reached a stage that tomorrow we have a Lieutenant General level border meet. The current requirement is to ensure that there is enough de escalation in the situation and there are no more small body punches and skirmishes on the LAC. For that, there has to be a mutually acceptable status quo request from both sides, and there has to be a mutually agreeable line which they can go back on. While this line would have to be sustained over these summers, it will be more prudent for both the forces to ensure that they have enough military deployment, and especially India should have enough boots on ground. In the tactical realm, India is much more capable than before to be able to move enough reserves, whether it is from the mountain formations or the armored formations, and with the availability of C-130s, the Chinooks, it is much more possible to place these kind of forces in the pockets where we intend to block the Chinese transgressions, or to be able to create opportunity for us to occupy pieces of ground and territory which is beneficial to us to further bargain, to have that leverage to be able to pull our forces up and push China back. But it's not going to be an easy military match, because China, given the advantage of the terrain, has already over the last 2 to 3 years, since Lanzhou and Chengdu were amalgamated into TMC, has been able to put enough and a wide range of weapon systems, created a lot of infrastructure development and also military deployments. So while China is trying to create infrastructure in Tibet, which it terms as Tibet Autonomous Region, it is pertinent to note that this region also gives depth to its CPEC and BRI initiative, and also it is important for China from its strategic perspective to hold on to areas along the LAC to be able to give depth to its deployments. So for doing so, it may transgress at many points, especially in the northern sector, and India needs to be a little more careful. Diplomatically, we should be able to contain China currently. Given the situation, there is a lot of scope for India to be able to hard bargain and trade. And we are not talking about the military space, we are talking about the diplomatic space and the economic space, and also the geopolitical space where we can do much better. Insofar as the information warfare is concerned, China has got immense potential and capability which it is putting to bear, and India has to be absolutely cautious and at the same time be proactive to enhance its IW capabilities, surveillance capabilities, and have collaborations with friendly countries to be able to use their assets and their resources to get the complete battle space picture insofar as China is concerned, right from its movement from the mainland China towards TAR, and also to be able to pick up the deployments of its military and its weapon systems in Tibet. The reserves which we have currently also include in mountain formation, and also a reserve in the central command. We also have armored divisions, and the two reserve armored divisions are there. So we should be able to push enough forces for the moment. The relocation of Indian Air Force assets is also vital into enhancing the reconnaissance and surveillance capability, and also be able to have more fighters and jets there. Air-to-air refueling remains an important asset because of the reach currently and the rarefied atmosphere, so we have to be sure of what equipment to use. Chinooks will come in a little more handy because they will be able to lift pieces of these potent artillery equipment or AD equipment or the mechanized equipment, and be able to place it in places where we need to be able to plug gaps. In the years to come and near future, India should look at wireless surveillance balloons, and we should be able to place them along the LAC so that our real-time information is much more robust and proactive, and we get adequate warning for any Chinese movement. While you can't cross the LAC with your own fighters and go for that surveillance mode, these wireless surveillance balloons should be the thing to go for currently. Insofar as the strategic and operational reach is concerned, we have to enhance our naval reach. Naval reach is very pertinent because as we go ahead, India would have to make choices. While I see this present skirmishes and transgressions not as something which China has put against India, but it happens to be so because China is in its expansionist mode, trying to lay claims over parts of islands of South China Sea, Hong Kong. It is very irked with Taiwan, and also it needs to finish this unfinished business of Tibet. So, in my opinion, it is doing exactly that, and it's just that the LAC is manned across by India, so it tends to become a military issue as well. And Indian Air Force capabilities in terms of surveillance needs to be enhanced. The asset of attack hectors is one thing which we have now got in our arsenal. So maybe it's time to move some birds towards the LAC and be able to be both in surveillance and strike mode, available as a deterrent. And mechanized infantry is another arm which should be used cautiously in areas where there are terrain frictions, but absolutely it should be used openly in areas, and that too on the plateau. Because when it comes to a military skirmish, you have to take the battle to the adversary, and that battle will be along the watershed and beyond, and that is where these light assets can be created and made as we go along. Signal int and OSINT are also the critical aspects which need more collaboration between us and other countries. Geopolitical alliances will mature, whether G7 matures or we support directly or indirectly some kind of a NATO mission or a US mission. That is for us to see as we go around. There's enough time for that because the world is currently struggling with COVID, and I foresee economic punishment being imposed on China precisely by the US and maybe many other countries. And while we have the option to side with one of the sides, we should be absolutely unambiguously only working in our national interest and be able to support or side with an alliance or a party which benefits us completely. China is looking at us and getting threatened because we stand a chance now to take over a lot of manufacturing and services hub from China, and that acknowledgement of the fact that it may happen post COVID is what is troubling China more, and maybe this is the time that it has found it prudent to have something going along on the LAC as a part of muscle flexing, which does not affect India at all, because as far as we are concerned, we can only give the ambiguity to China to be able that it is reacting in Tibet, and maybe it is coming onto LAC with the difference of perception. But there are many areas on the LAC which we have had no transgressions previously, while our military and other thinkers are trying to suggest that it is happening for the first time and it has got some kind of offensive design. I don't think so that is the plan. While China is concerned, it is controlling TAR and it will continue to expand there. And obviously this year, next year and beyond, you will have these kind of transgressions happening. Insofar as Chinese deployment in TAR is concerned, you may consider them better as permanent. There is no way they are going ahead. And as they keep coming up from the mainland towards the LAC and keep creating bases every season, the next season they're going to expand further towards the LAC, and that is a cause of concern. India needs to map the entire LAC once and give it a prudent military thought, like was done once during Divine Matrix a few years back. And we need to be sure that whatever we had planned for that time, which couldn't take off due to whatever reasons, political will may be lacking or maybe economic constraints, it is high time that we build up these capabilities to ensure that the military is absolutely operationally ready and prepared for any eventuality. And insofar as the men on ground are concerned, I would only say that the men are most motivated, whether they are on the LC, IB, or the LAC. And in the Indian Armed Forces, the ITBP and BSF are much more prepared than before, and they should be able to take on these tactical situations and even skirmishes. The only advice would be that let's not have any kinetics from our side. While there's a prudent thought that if you are a little aggressive, then the other person generally cows down. But that's not the situation this time, because the influx of Chinese troops and transgression is much more in number and quantum. So we have to be a little more militarily wary. And as we are building up our reserves, we should keep our hands close to our chest and be able to do something more than what we have been doing traditionally over the last few decades. And Chanakya Niti is here to stay, and that is the way to go. And this guile and deceit is the order, and we should be able to gauge China in the right perspective and be able to take those steps which are necessary for our own prosperity and development. Politically, there's one more issue that since it's a standoff which is happening through the TAR, Tibet is a region which we have not announced or pronounced either which way with a lot of clarity. So while Dalai Lama has been in the country for many years, it is also time to echo the thoughts of the President of USA through his holy self, and be able to have multiple pressures being building up on China, whether it is economic, whether it's diplomatic, geopolitical, cultural, or insofar as holding of territories in Tibet and other places are concerned. And with that, I only hope that tomorrow's border meet goes off positively, and we have some level of tactical accruals on both sides. And I would not say that we or China would need a face saver, but currently the assets China has deployed are in much more quantum, and it is China which requires a face saver. So I'm not too sure if China is willing to go the way to reach that face saver through a conflict and then thereafter by grandstanding to close out that skirmish. But I'm more hopeful that China will see the logic, and especially in the areas where we have had a agreement that this is the LAC, and we understand that last 22 odd border meetings and at the NSS level. So that clarity should be brought out tomorrow. I'm quite sure a political commissar of China will accompany this delegation, and he would have the heads up from the political establishment there. And I'm quite sure that even the Corps commander from India would have been briefed by the military intelligence and with inputs of the MEA and other int agencies. So let's see how it goes and what kind of a positive tactical accrual we are able to get tomorrow. Beyond that, the operational and strategic realm still remain open, and options will remain open with China through this season to be able to flex its muscle. And India should be prepared, and we should be absolutely confident with the kind of reserves and kind of forces we hold today to be able to match the Chinese aggression if it is to come about. And also areas towards Uttarakhand and sugar sector, and especially the areas where the Tibetan plateau is flat. And you also had a recent spate where I believe China edged through its false cartography the rift between India and Nepal over the map issue. And that takes me back to about 2007-8 when I was privy to a map being held in hand of a DGM of a country. And at that time, that map showed the tri-junction in Nepal. And surprisingly, when it was pointed out to him by me, we then came to know, when we looked at the map from the reverse side, that the cartography was done by China. So it has been a long drawn plan of China to create elbow space against its adversary. So against India, which it sees as an economic power or a geopolitical power to rise, obviously it will use every means through the Tibetan Autonomous Region and also Nepal to ensure its interests are maintained and enough elbow space exists for it to carry out its infrastructure development and military deployment in the Tibet Autonomous Region. Thank you.